Well, after we got done speaking about this subject last week, I spent some time this week thinking about the other side of this issue. If you were here last week, we spent some time looking at this text in Matthew 6, and we were talking about these treasures, these things that we are called to store up, or will, in fact, as Jesus makes it clear, it's not really a question. We're going to do one, or we're going to do the other. We're going to store up either treasures on earth, or we're going to store up treasures in heaven. If you read through that again, you'll notice, and we're going to in a moment, you're going to notice he doesn't want to make it sound like it's an option. That it's almost kind of a given. One is going to happen. So the question then becomes, which one? And we obviously spent a lot of time last week on the first. We talked a lot about what treasures on earth look like, and as I was writing this, I realized that after a message like that, I think there's a possibility that we can walk away and become very melancholy. We can become saddened by the reality of what that looks like. As I was writing this, a story popped into my mind. It's later in Matthew 19. You don't have to necessarily turn over there right now, but it's one I'm sure many of you heard before. The rich young man who speaks to Jesus. The one comes before him in verse 16 in chapter 19. Man came up to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" Jesus says, "There is only one who is good. Why do you call me that? And if you want to enter life, obey the commandments." "Which ones?" the man inquired, and Jesus replied, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. And all of these I have kept," the young man said. "What do I still lack?" Jesus answers in verse 21, "If you want to be perfect, go and sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven." You notice that phrase there sounds familiar. "Then come and follow me." In verse 22, when the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. And that last part there, that verse 22, just resonated with me this week. I feel like it can easily become an overwhelming thing. Because there are so many wonderful things to love and care about and put our lives into. And when we hear a message like we did last week that we are meant to really push against the treasures of the earth, we can easily become like this rich young man. We can think that all these treasures, these things I care about, are now the enemy. They are now what is wrong in my life. And I don't want to spend as much time thinking about what the things are wrong, but to think about the things that are right, to think about the things that are good. And so as we get into our word this morning, and we want to talk about the other side of that coin, treasures of heaven, I had one guiding principle, one thing I want to keep at the forefront of our minds as we talk through everything this morning. One thing that we're going to fill in on our bulletins, you'll have it, and to continue to remind yourself of it as we get going. And it's essentially this, that when we consider treasures of our heart, and again, those treasures can be either one, treasures of the earth and treasures in heaven. When considering the treasures of our heart, the name of our message today, whatever form they may be. And again, last week we talked about the treasures of the earth. They come in many different forms. They look in many different ways. It is the principle that matters. When considering the treasures of our heart, whatever the form may be, it is the principle that matters. And again, that principle was, we will either hate the one or love the other. We will be devoted to the one and despise the other. So what I want to do is I want to read through the scripture again. I want to read through this part in chapter 6 once more, and we're going to pray, and then we'll jump into our message, okay? So starting at verse 19. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. You will either hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Let's pray. Father, as we jump back into this section in Matthew 6 once again, as we come before your word, I pray, as I always do, help us to be aware of your truth. Help us to be open to what you are doing. Father, this is a big issue. This is one that many of us struggle with. We recognize that there are wonderful things in your creation, wonderful things you have put into our life. But the principle remains, we need to remember that one must be before the rest. For if we don't, we may begin to hate the one and love the other. So help us, guide us today, Lord, as we get into our word. And as always, I pray as a matter of self, help me to get out of the way. Preach your message, Father, into our hearts this morning by the power of the Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. We saw last week that as we talked about this issue, we cannot rest on the issue of money alone. That in here, we have a vastly oscillating diversity, if you will, of financial realities. Some of us have what we would feel is enough money. Some of us feel like we don't have enough money. Some of us in reality really don't have enough money, and some of us have more than we maybe know what to do with. That if we begin to look at this, like I said last week, and leave it at money alone, that it becomes very cut and dry. We can easily just say, you know what? Just make sure money doesn't run your life. It's not the heart of all you do, and you're good. And that's the end of the story. And for some, that is how they look at this. They see those last couple of words. You cannot serve both God and money, and they paint the rest of it with that reality. And as I pointed out last week, I think he uses the word treasure here for a reason. We recognized there were so many different things. We saw that there were so many different forms that treasures come in. We talked about the issue of money. We talked about our spouse as well. Yes, we are meant to love our spouse, but to devote our entirety to them seems forward in this passage. We talked about our children. We talked about our jobs. We talked about power. We talked about authority, pride, and status. The forms change. The principles do not. And so I began to realize as I was working through it this week that to recognize this principle, we have to then say it works both ways. That if the earthly form can change, this principle then affects it, love one and hate the other, then the question becomes that I have for you this morning, can the heavenly form change? If we say that the treasures of the earth look and sound and can do so many different things, and we can be infatuated with different ones, and yet they're all still treasures of the earth, are there different forms, different ways that we can go about looking at the treasures of heaven? The question that we come away with then is, if I want to do that, how do I go about understanding what those are and obtaining them? You guys asked a great question, so we'll go through that now. Because Jesus thankfully answers that exact question in the next verse. He doesn't just tell us, go and seek out treasures of the heavens, but then leaves us to figure out what they are. No, he tells us what they are. Verse 22. A piece that we didn't really look at much last week, but for a reason. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now, what in the world is he talking about here? What is he trying to get across? Well, it's possible that while maybe you aren't sure exactly what he's referring to here, something should have popped out at you just within even those first few words. If you look at those first few words in 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. There's a word there that we have heard before. Where have we seen a discussion before about lamps, about light, and about darkness? And our minds should, just as theirs were. Now granted, we've talked about this weeks to months ago. So understand, maybe we didn't go right back. But remember, he's in the middle of this conversation with people. This isn't stopping and starting for every Sunday. These people just heard within maybe minutes to an hour ago something that should be connecting immediately with their minds. And that is back in chapter 5. For in chapter 5, maybe a good month or so ago, we read something that makes this clear to us. Look at verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. That should be an immediate connection for us. That should help us immediately understand what Jesus is trying to say for us this morning. That this should already be a reality for us. That if we say we're to this point, and we've been climbing this mount here together, doing this work together. We said when we started at the bottom, we want to follow you all the way up. We're going to climb Mount Everest with you, Jesus, and we're going to do the things you want of us. Then for every step we've taken, we should continue to recognize the steps that have come before. You are the light of the world. You are meant to shine in the world. You are meant to give light into the darkness, that the darkness may see the one who gives light. Not you, but God. And as Jesus brings up this issue, when he gets to this point, he expects that we already understand the expectation put before us. Verse 19, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. We don't do it because that is the work of the world, and you are not part of this world. You are salt in this world. You are light in this world. If we spend our lives pining away for the glories and the treasures of this earth, of this world, then in what way will we begin to look any different than those around us? Salt, we talk about, is meant to stand out. You know when you eat a dish that is either way undersalted or has way too much of it. In its nature, it is meant to impact the whole. We talk about how you are meant to, as one who follows Christ, to flavor the things around you, to cause people to stand up and take notice. Something in your life, something about you is different than the rest. It changes life around you. You are the light of this world. That for all of those that go stumbling around in the darkness, they have no idea what it is to then live in darkness. My mom and sister are here this week and are visiting us, and I remember years and years and years ago, we were playing in the garage of my grandparents. And my sister was trying to find my brother and I. We were hiding, and they had this spot in the garage, and it was just a crazy spot because the way you looked at it. If you were in the spot, you could see everything. The way that the boxes were constructed, and if you sat in the middle, the way that the darkness came in because there was no windows or light coming in, if you were in the darkness, you could see out of it. But if you were standing in the light looking into it, you had no idea. So I remember we were sitting there, and she came in to look for us. And we were as plain as day, as much as I am standing here right now. But she couldn't see us because we were standing in the darkness, and she just couldn't peer into it. And it was an amazing thought that I had this week, that reality, that for everybody who stands in the darkness, for those who stand in there, sometimes they can be standing as plain as day, but still just cannot see through. Bumping around, just trying to figure out what life is about. That when you are the light of the world, you are called to be those that shine something different. The point Jesus is making is if we pine away in our lives trying to scrounge for things that only just rust and destroy and are stolen, then how is that any different than those who live a life in darkness to begin with? Yes, it is great to want to be involved and want things of this world. Sports are a wonderful thing to take part in. It's okay to want a cool car once in a while or these nice things. But if my whole life is devoted to that, which eventually will fall away, how can I ever speak a single amount of truth into a world that wants the exact same thing? That we don't go about this work in the world as the same as the world, because then how will the world ever know that there's a difference to be had? That if we spend all that we are, how will the world ever take notice? How will you shine light into the life of one stuck in the darkness? If, as Jesus puts it here, your eyes, your life are full of darkness. It is a blessing to those in the world, and it is a blessing for you as well. And it begins with the work of storing up treasures in the only place that will last for all time. Again, we said this last week. There are those that are of the earth and those that are of the heavens. The question then becomes, the one that I stated early on, what then are these treasures? What are these things that we should be chasing? What are these things that are so much better? What does it even look like to store up treasures in heaven? If you'll turn with me, Matthew 25. In Matthew 25, he has this very conversation with those that are looking to find this answer. In Matthew 25, Jesus is talking to those that are seeking out an understanding of what it is to store up treasures in heaven. Starting in verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All of the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the treasures of the heavens, if you will, and the kingdom that is prepared for you since the creation of the world." For, verse 35, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then the righteous will answer them, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothing and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you?" The king will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for the one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." The power that rests in this is that to live as Christ, to live as light in the world, means to store up treasures in heaven as a son and daughter of God to God's creation. Jill and I spend hours and hours in our life devoted to teaching up our daughter, to help her understand the things that are right in the world and the wrong of the world. The goal of that is when she goes out into this world and she impacts the life of others, she says please or thank you. She shares with somebody else rather than takes. When she does the things that we hope that she does two things in that moment. First of all, she does that which is from herself, that others see that and say she is doing something. There's something wonderful about that person right there. But at the same time, she's immediately reflecting the one who has taught her as well. She is showing through her actions what it is to be parented, to be taught, to be led in the right ways. Now, granted, she screws up sometimes. Sometimes she doesn't share. Sometimes she doesn't say please and thank you. And in that moment, in that moment, she isn't living up to the expectations of herself. However, that doesn't change the ones who taught her. That doesn't change the ones who represent her. We still have not changed in what we expect of her. She has just done something else. You have a heavenly Father who is instructing you, who is teaching you, who is hoping the best for you, who wants the best for you, who wants you to go into this world and impact lives, to teach others what it is to follow Him through your own actions. We don't just do the right thing because it's so much better. We do the right thing because we've been taught by the one who knows what it is to be right. We don't just do the good thing because it's so much better than the other option. We do it because we've been taught by the one who is in fact good. When we choose not to, it doesn't affect or impact who God is. It just reminds us that we need to remind ourselves and be taught with Him. And the world says, I'm hungry. And don't we see that every day? We see it on the news. We see those who are dying of hunger. But we feed ourselves. For those in light, Jesus says, you came and you fed me. The world that says, I'm thirsty, I need something to drink. The world takes care of itself. But for those in the light, bring them water. Even this morning, as I was going back through this, a story popped in my head. I remember last year when Tim Garrett came and spoke about our missions. Remember, all last year we spent every month looking at different reality of the gospel. And all the way back in January, we talked about what it was to be missionally minded. And Tim came up and he told us a story of how one time over in Mineola, there was someone who needed food, someone who needed something. He was a vagrant, he was coming through town, and he came over to the Quick Mart over there, and he was standing there just needing something. Help me in some way. I have not eaten, I have not had something to drink. Will someone help me in this way? And there were all these people standing in the mart. And their answer was, well, does anybody know a number to one of the pastors? Can we call one of the pastors? You know, the guys that are supposed to take care of these things, the ones that are supposed to take care of these issues. That's what they're paid for, right? That's their job. They come over with the credit card and they'll make everything right. And Tim's question when he showed up, when everyone had finally gotten a hold of him and he got there, and he looked around and he saw members of his own church, some on his own eldership and deacon board, standing there. The question in his mind was, why do I need to be called? Where is your desire to feed the one who's hungry? Where is your desire, O Christian, to feed and clothe the one in need? We don't need to call the professionals here. As if the pastor is the super Christian and everyone else has no ability to do this. Everyone is called. We are all in this fight together. We are all meant to reach out and to give and to clothe and to visit, to love. All of these examples are a clear sense that those who have stored up their treasures in heaven have lived a life where my need is not a central purpose or point. That if we want to have our treasures in heaven, we only but need to look around us. In a world that needs the salt. In a world that needs the light. In a world that needs a counterpoint to the same thing they hear every day. That it only makes it harder when we have terrible examples of what it looks like to be a Christian in our day and age. Where most people look at Christianity and think of those that are bigoted, hate-filled, perfect, that they don't know and don't care to know what it is to live a life other than self-righteous. That is the mantra. That is the image that is out there. Why? Because we've done a wonderful job as a church of looking more like the world than looking like the Creator. When we come and we begin to do the important work that's set before us. Yeah, it's not always easy. And yeah, it's not always the most fun thing in the world. Yeah, it gets gross, and yeah, it gets dirty. Yeah, it causes us to go to places that bring us out of our comfort zone. It causes us to talk to people that aren't like us, that don't sound like us, don't look like us. It causes us to go to places that we would never think possible. But what Jesus' promise is here is that if you followed me this far up, I have given you every tool to keep on going. That the top of the mountain is not something just for those reserved for pastors and those with degrees on their wall. That for every Christian, every person who has put their promise and their life in the work of Jesus Christ, you can do this. And even more so, you should be doing this. You don't win the world by looking like the world. For what in this world these days is even something desirable? That we add to the madness that is already out there. We add to the hate that is already out there. No, that we offer the salt. We give them something different to taste. We give them light that they may see that there is a different way. That we live. We don't just talk. We live in a way that is wholly different, that someone is going to snap their head around and take notice. What is in their life that is so different? How can I get a taste of that? I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And they wonder, God, how are you ever any of those things? You don't get hungry. You don't get thirsty. You certainly don't get locked up. You don't get sick. You don't wear clothes. But you came to those in me, my creation, whether they know it or not, whether they even recognize me as existing or not. Their heart is crying out for someone to step into their lives and bring light into the darkness, to bring salt into the monotony, to bring a change that isn't about a self-fulfilling purpose, but one that is about a glorifying reality. That this shouldn't be a struggle. This should be a normal outpouring of our lives. But Jesus understands. Praise be to God that He understands that sometimes we are tempted. Sometimes we fall down. That we have moments where something in our life just takes over. There are so many times where I think about how guilty I am when something has taken over in my soul. Man, I really should have probably read my Bible, but instead I was doing A. And I really should have been praying for this instead I was doing B. Yes, we have moments where we're not going to be perfect. And yes, we're going to have moments where we don't do the things we are called and know that we should do. That's why Paul exclaims in probably one of my favorite verses that in the light of sin, he does the things he knows he is not to do and does not do the things he knows he is supposed to do. That how many times do I cry out in the same way? God, I know the path I'm supposed to take, but how many times do I start meandering off into the distance? The wonderful thing is that Jesus knows that overall the reality is that no matter what we do, as long as we keep at the heart of our lives the focus, that principle, that we keep the one who we love above all else, there will always be a chance to come back, always a chance to correct our direction, always a chance to speak into one more life. But the thing about this struggle, this issue of treasure of the earth, Jesus knows for those who desperately want to chase after Him. For as many times as we think that it's not possible, we cannot reach that point, that we can do the things that we just think are out of our reach. Not because of something inside of us or innate to our character, but because He has gone before us. He has done the things that are undoable. He has blessed the world in some ways that they may never even know or accept. He said, you can climb this. You can make it over this next issue. And the treasures in heaven are so worth it in the end. So go, be my salt. Go, be my light. Go and do something that this world would never expect. Live as one who forgoes the idea of I and me. Give up on the master who would keep you enslaved to the things of this world, and love the one who puts all of it in perspective. Next week, if it seems like it would be any harder to do, we're going to talk about something that's even harder than this. That while many of us may struggle with the idea of treasures of this earth, I know there's one thing that all of us at one time or another deal with, and that's the issue of worry. Jesus devotes an entire rest of this chapter to the issue of worry, and that's what we're going to tackle over the next couple of weeks. But I pray that as we wrap this up, as we move on to the next piece, may you keep at the heart of your life the one whom you are meant to love. For the sad reality is sometimes we just don't remember. But the principle, no matter what it is, no matter what we do, always stay the same. We'll either hate the one or love the other. We'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. May we be those who are so sold out and devoted to God that these aren't even a question in our life anymore. As who's in control and what is it that is the treasure of my heart. That as Christ has given His whole self to us, we may give our whole selves to Him. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. As always, thank you for the gift of your scriptures and of your Son who makes these things possible. I pray, Father, that as we think about our upcoming week, we think about the things in our lives, may they not be that which tears us down. May we not look at the things that maybe are going on, the choices that we have made, the stuff that we may uphold in our lives as something we care about, and not be broken because of it, but rather look at it as another opportunity. That every day is another opportunity to make you Lord of our life. To say you and you alone are the one I will serve. You and you alone are the one that I love, and everything else may be seen in light of that. And it doesn't matter how long we've been a Christian or how long we've been in the church. It doesn't matter what denomination we grew up in. It doesn't matter what type of Bible translation we have. All of those things do not matter. What matters is we have a God in Jesus Christ who has gone before us and showed us it is possible. It is possible to live a life that matters for your kingdom. It is possible to be a light in this world of darkness. That we can overcome the timidity that sometimes strikes us. We can overcome the fear that sometimes that grips us. That we can truly make a difference in your world today for those who cry out, I am hungry. I am thirsty. I'm in need of clothing. I'm in need of love and mercy. I need someone to come into my life, and who better than those who in everything they do reflect the one who sent them. May we be that God. May we cause others to turn around in a world of darkness and take note that there is something bright. There is something shining. And it is the love that emanates from your cross. It is Jesus Christ, the one who has sent us and causes us today to stand up and say, we can do the things He has told us we can do. I pray, Father, may that be our heart this week. In Jesus' name I pray.